A very good afternoon to you all. I am Maryam. I work as an educational advisor at United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan. We are the official source of US education in Pakistan. We are present across more than 178 countries of the world, and we have more than 430 advising centers across the globe. We provide free of cost, accurate, comprehensive, and to the point education information about the US. And our presence in Pakistan is in 3 cities, which is Lahore, Islamabad, and Karachi. I work as an educational advisor in the Lahore Center. And today with me, I have Mr. Zeshaan Qureshi, who is the principal advisor test prep and the team lead for Lahore Center. I welcome you, Zeshaan, on this session.
Thank you.
As you all know, that this session is all about TOEFL iBT. So we will have a comprehensive session about this exam, and we will deal with all the requisites for this exam during the session. So what is TOEFL? TOEFL stands for Test of English as Foreign Language for university for university study or for work and immigration. So basically, this is a language proficiency test which will help you either get into an institution in the US for your higher education, or for work purpose if you're interested in working in the US, or if you're interested in applying for immigration to the US. So this language test is essential as far as your future prospects in the US are concerned, and in particular for education. As we all know, owing to the pandemic that we are going through, the COVID-19 situation, this test is also available to take from home. So home administration is available around the clock every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday until June 30th. So if you are looking at taking this test, and if you are not sure if you can delay it more than June 30th, you can take this test from home. However, you need to make sure that you meet certain equipment requirements for the test. So before you actually register yourself for a home-based test, make sure that your system or the computer that you're using has ETS test browser for Windows or Mac installed on it, and it needs to have Proctor U system check. So these are the prereqs that you require, technical prereqs that you require for your system before you can take the TOEFL iBT home-based test. This test is accepted around by more than 11,000 universities and in more than 150 countries. So it's not just for US, it's accepted by the majority of the countries of the world. So this is something that will add to the credibility of the test. And if you're considering taking a language proficiency test, then TOEFL could be your first choice. What do you actually require to take the test? So in terms of the administrative controls that the test centers are supposed to have, or if you're taking it from home, you need to have a valid passport, which is your valid ID, or you could also have a smart CNIC. By a smart CNIC, I mean the one with the chip in it. So these are the few requirements that you would need to have. Can we please move to the next slide, Zeshaan? Thank you. So what does this test look like? As far as the test is concerned, I've taken this test personally, and I found it to be very basic. Like it just tests your basic level English, and there's nothing for which you need to memorize any formulas or any particular, I don't know, the difficulty level is not that high. The test score, the total test score is 120. And there are 4 sections to the test, and you do get a break during the test. So there's the reading section, which has a time limit of 54 to 72 minutes, which means that this is comparatively a longer duration section. It will have questions from 30 to 40 in number. And within this section, you will be reading a passage and you will be responding to questions. So we will go through all of these sections in detail during the later parts of the presentation. For now, it's just an overview that I want you guys to understand. As far as the listening section is concerned, there are 41 to 57, there are about 28 to 39 questions, and you get a total time of 41 to 57 minutes. So this is comparatively, the time duration is comparatively smaller than the reading section. And in the listening section, you just have to you have to answer questions about lectures or classroom discussions. So what you're basically doing is that you're listening to a lecture or a conversation, and you will be answering questions related to that while you speak, or you type. So as far as the speaking section is concerned, you will have 17 minutes for this section. There are going to be 4 tasks. You will be asked to speak about a familiar topic, or you will be asked to discuss certain material that you will be provided. And by that material, I mean something to read and then something to listen. And in response, you will speak about that. The writing section has 2 tasks. And in the writing section, you will be given one independent task, which will be about a particular topic or a general topic that you need to speak about. And then the second section would be, the second part of the section would be based on an integrated approach, where you would have to read something first, maybe listen or maybe listen to something, or the pattern or the scenario could change, like you first listen and then you read and then you write about it. So that's how the writing section goes. As you can see from the entire format of the test, this test has a very holistic approach, in the terms that when you're listening, you're not only tested on your listening capabilities, you're also tested on you're also tested on the other quantums of the language. As far as the speaking is concerned, you are also tested on your reading skills first, and then your listening skills, and then you speak about a particular topic. And so is the case with the writing section of the test. So if you prepare well, there's no way that you will not score good. You will score good if you have the right approach and if you have the right strategy to take the test. So the total time about this the total time for this test is around 3 hours. You do get a break during the test. Note taking is allowed, so you can write notes while you're taking the test. And in the later parts of the presentation, I will also tell you the specific time which is assigned to take the notes during different sections of the test. Your accent is not important. You don't have to fake an accent. If you don't have an accent, it's fine, because as the name depicts, it's an English test as a foreign language. English test for a foreign language. So you don't need to have a native English accent or an American accent to say. How is the test scored? So as I mentioned before, each section has 30 points. There are 4 sections, so 120 points in total. Reading and listening sections are actually scored by an online system. However, the speaking and writing section is scored by an examiner who goes through each and every response that you give within these 2 sections, and they score your responses. What is the integrated task? So integrated task is when you have different sections combined to answer questions from one particular section, as I mentioned earlier. And during this test, you will be assessed on different quantums. As far as the speaking and listening section is concerned, these are kind of considered tricky by a few students, because in Pakistan, generally, when you take a language test, you tend to have just the reading section where you're just doing a comprehension or something related to that, and later a writing section where you're just doing a composition or an essay writing. However, in this test, the two added sections would be the speaking and listening. So in these sections, which are considered the tricky sections by the students, you are tested on the quantums of understanding, how well you understand the language and how well you're able to communicate what you've understood, and then paraphrasing in terms that if something is said to you, how well you can put it in your own words. And then lastly, but most importantly, the reasoning ability, how well you're able to reason out the information which is given to you, and how well you can move forward with that, and how well you can communicate that. This brings us to these separate sections of the test. So Zeshaan will start off with the reading section. Please, Zeshaan, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you are doing well during the COVID situation. Stay home and stay safe. So I'll be starting with the reading section. And in the reading section, you're going to see passages. And the length of each passage is going to be around 700 words. How many passages you're going to get? So there will be around 3 to 4 passages that you're going to see in the reading section. For each passage, you'll be having around 10 questions that you need to answer. And the total time that you'll be having for for this section is 54 to 72 minutes. So my suggestion is start reading. Start reading as much as possible. And when you read something, try to look at the gist of each paragraph while you're reading a passage, and try to differentiate the gist from the details. And also learn to skim, because that's also going to help you in TOEFL. Okay, so let's look at the question types. So there are around 10 question types that you're going to see in the reading section. So there are certain questions that are concerned with details. So there's one kind of question that asks you to find factual information. So in this kind of question, you have to find the answer from the passage. So the passage, the information would be mentioned in the passage. The second kind of question is understanding negative facts. So in this kind of question, you are generally asked to select an answer choice which is not mentioned in the passage. Then you have inference questions. So making an inference means drawing a conclusion from the stated facts. So this means that when you're making an inference, you are trying to find a conclusion that is not explicitly stated in the passage. And then there is rhetorical purpose questions. So rhetorical purpose is again making inferences. So in terms of question number 3, you may be making inferences about the whole passage. You may be asked to find the conclusion, but in rhetorical purpose, you may be asked to make inference about a certain statement. For example, the question may go like, why does the professor say XYZ? So this is the difference between the rhetorical purpose and making inferences where you are looking for the whole conclusion. Okay, then you have vocabulary and reference questions. So this also means that you need to have a good vocabulary. So the focus on vocabulary in TOEFL is not as much as you see in SAT or in GRE, but still you need to have a good vocabulary. A good vocabulary is not going to hurt you, it's going to help you. So you may find question that asks you the meaning of a specific word. Excuse me. And then you have referent usage. So in this kind of question, you may be asked, what is the reference pointing towards? For example, there may be a discussion on English and French people in the passage, and then it may be followed by a pronoun, they. So you may be asked what the they refers to, the English people or the French people. So this is what we mean by reference usage. Then there are questions that try to assess your understanding at the sentence level. For example, there will be a question that may ask you to simplify a sentence. So this kind of question will be asking you to select the answer choice that actually rephrases the sentence, a particular sentence, and simplifies it, explains the meaning of that sentence. And then there are questions in which you need to insert the sentence. So a sentence, after the passage, the sentence would be given to you, and all you need to do is to indicate in which part of the passage that sentence should go. Okay, and then you have read to learn questions. So in this kind of question, you would be given an introductory summary after the passage, and then you have to select the sentences that complete that summary. Excuse me. Okay, and then you have questions of completing schematic tables. So in this kind of question, you are asked to match ideas with statements. So again, this kind of question tries to assess your ability to understand the passage and to understand different statements and ideas. Okay, so just to give you some examples of finding facts and negative questions. So you may be asked, according to paragraph 4, what has recent research proved? So now this is a fact-finding question. So this proof of the research would be given in the statement, and all you need to do is to find that those facts from the paragraph and select an answer choice. Then the next one says, which of the following is not mentioned in paragraph 2 as a main factor in development of XYZ? So as I mentioned before, the focus here is to find something that is not mentioned in the passage, and that's what you're going to be looking for. An example of inference question: what can be inferred from paragraph 3 about ABC? So this is basically asking you to look at a conclusion that is not mentioned in the passage. So this is something that is implicitly implying a conclusion based on what's mentioned in the passage. And the next one says in paragraph 6, the author discusses XYZ in order to do what? So you would be finding a number of statements below, and you have to select the answer that discusses that tells the test taker why XYZ was discussed. Okay, an instance from vocabulary. The word predominant. You may find this a question like this. The word predominant in paragraph 3 is closest in meaning to. So this means that they want to know if you know the meaning of the word predominant. And the next one is from reference usage. The word they in the passage refers to. So this is similar to the example that I gave you for English and French people. They want to know if you understand the usage of pronouns in general and references. So let's look at an example for sentence level questions. Which of the following best expresses the essential information in the highlighted sentence? So there may be a sentence that is highlighted, and they want to know if you understand what the highlighted sentence is expressing. In paragraph 1 of the passage, there is a missing sentence. The paragraph is repeated below and shows 4 letters A, B, C, and D that indicate where the following sentence could be added. So after the passage, there may be a statement given to you, and in this kind of question, they are asking you to select a location. So these A, B, C, and D would be given to you in different locations in the paragraph, and you have to select one of them in order to tell where do you think this missing statement should go. Okay, then you have questions that involve assessing if you understand how a passage or a paragraph is summarized. So let's read this. Complete the summary by selecting the 3 answer choices that express the most important ideas in the passage. The directions given to you are: an introductory sentence for a brief summary of the passage is provided below. Complete the summary by selecting the 3 answer choices that express the most important ideas in the passage. Some sentences do not belong in the summary because they express ideas that are not presented in the passage or are minor ideas in the passage. This question is worth 2 points. So let's look at this example. Teotihuacan was a highly developed city in Mesoamerica that reached its peak between about 8150 to 700. So basically after the passage, this statement is given to you, and this is kind of a summary. So you have to select 3 answer choices that would complete this summary. So as you can see, you are given 6 answer choices below. So out of these 6, you have to select 3 that would best complete the statement that I just read that is given at the top. So this kind of question attempts to understand whether you understand summarizing a passage or a paragraph well. Okay, next I'm going to go to listening. So in listening section, you are generally, you are going to be listening to a topic once. So there may be some excerpts that are replayed and then questions are asked, but generally, you know, what you listen once will not be repeated. So always you will be given scratch paper, so always listen carefully and always make notes. But then when you are making notes, a mistake that people make is that you may also lose your concentration to listening. So just make, you know, shorthand notes and keep your focus on the listening section. So you would be hearing conversations and lectures in the listening section. The total time for the section is 41 to 57 minutes. So we'll start with conversations. You are going to hear 2 or 3 conversations. And after each conversation, you're going to have 5 questions for each conversation. So the conversations may be around about office hours between a professor and a student, or they may be non-academic service encounters. For instance, the conversation may have taken place in the office of a professor. It may be about academic content. And just to give you an example, a student may be asking for clarification about the content of a lecture. Then in non-academic conversations, someone may be inquiring at a service desk of a condo about rents, or someone may be inquiring about a payment for housing or for registering for a specific event. So you may have academic conversations as well as non-academic conversations. Okay, then in a lecture, there would be a professor who is talking about a content, a specific subject. Again, you don't need to have prior information about that subject, but listen to the lecture carefully. There will be 3 to 4 lectures. There will be 6 questions per lecture. When you're listening to the lecture, focus on whether there is repetition within the lecture. Focus whether the professor is trying to clarify something, and also focus whether there is a digression. So the digression means if at some point there is a main idea, but the professor digresses for some time from the main idea, but then comes back to it. So you would need to take notice of that. So classroom lectures, again, there may be a broad range of subjects. You don't need to have prior knowledge of those subjects. There may be just a professor speaking, or a student may have asked a question and then the professor is clarifying. So generally the categories that you're going to see are going to be from arts, architecture, literature, life sciences, like discussion on viruses, which may be pretty relevant in these times, unfortunately. And then maybe something on animal behavior, maybe something on astronomy, on the weather, or on education. So what do the question types relate to? So there are certain questions that would ask you to understand, to assess if you have understood the overall theme of the topic. So these are about the main ideas. So the question may ask you what the lecture is mainly about. Then there are kind of questions which are just purpose questions. For example, why did the professor ask to see the student? So the professor might have asked the student to see him in his office, and then based on that conversation, you will be asked to assess why did the professor ask to see the student? Why does the professor explain something? And if the professor identified a problem and a solution, you may be asked to answer that. There are questions that are detail oriented, and these kind of questions may ask you to indicate towards explicit facts that are mentioned in the lecture or in the conversation. For instance, it may ask you about a particular factor that was discussed within the lecture or the conversation. Another example is what resulted from the invention of X. For example, they may be talking about a device that, a new device that can discover new particles. So why was that device invented? What was the reason behind the invention of that device? And then you have questions that ask you to infer. It may happen that a short portion is replayed, and then you're asked to provide the purpose of that. So this kind of information is inferring. So this means that this will not be explicitly stated in the conversation or the lecture, but you are asked to select an answer choice that is implying something. For instance, what is the purpose of the woman's response? Why does the student say something in particular? Then you have questions that are inferring to attitude. For example, there may be a feeling of like or dislike that one of the participants in the conversation showed. So you may be asked about that. What is the professor's attitude towards something? What is the professor's opinion about something? And then you have questions which assess your understanding of the organization of the lectures or the conversations. So they may ask you to draw a relationship between two portions, or how the discussion is organized. For example, the discussion may start with a question, and then it may turn into an evaluation or a clarification, and then end with a conclusion. So you should understand how the whole conversation or the lecture is organized. Okay, then you'll be having a short break of 10 minutes, and then it would be followed by other sections. And Maryam, you can take over from here.
Yes, Zeshaan. Can you move to the next slide, please?
Sorry, it would be
Yeah.
speaking section.
Yeah. So as the name depicts, you are expected to speak, but what do you have to speak about? So we will understand this during during the next few slides. So the total time for this section is 17 minutes. You will be getting variety of topics. It can be from personal experiences, maybe a campus-based scene, because it can be relatable to an aspiring student who's planning to go to the US, because the communication there on the campus or anywhere you go across would be in the same language, in English. And it can also be the academic content. Why? Because you will be expected, if you go for your grad school, maybe you will be expected to read content in English and then answer questions accordingly, or maybe write papers, thesis papers in English. So this test is something which actually explains to the practicality of going for higher education in the US. So in the speaking section, you will have one independent task where you will be asked to speak about your own ideas, experiences, and opinions. I will also explain to you in detail in the next slide how I will actually give you an example for that. For example, when I took my test, in the speaking section, I was asked to speak about my most cherished memory of childhood. This was the independent task that I got, and I related it to my own experiences. I expressed my own ideas about that, and then I expressed my own opinion about that. So that's what it was. As far as the integrated task is concerned, there are three types. So first, you will be expected to listen to a lecture very carefully or a conversation. The second part could be you read a passage and then you listen to an excerpt. So one kind is when you're just listening to a lecture or a conversation. The second is when you are just reading a passage and then you're expected to listen to an excerpt. So this has two parts. And then the third type could be where you are either made to listen or you're made to read something and then you have to speak about it. So this is how it works. So the integrated task can be a bit complicated, but the key to success for it is that you practice, and you practice as much as you can, because it is a time test. It does test your nerves and the level of stress that you can take. So if you've never practiced before, and if you get these tasks on hand right on the screen at that time, you might panic. You might panic because you have the capacity to panic when you're given a task which requires all three functions together, and then you have to come up and you have to speak. And considering the fact that English is not our first language, a lot of us tend to have this tendency where we just get confused, or our mind just gets boggled about it, and we are unable to speak. But within this test, you cannot afford to have any pauses or any moments of confusion, because these tasks are very straightforward. If you practice them, you can just go ahead and solve them. So as far as the scoring for the speaking section is concerned, it's very important that your delivery, how well you are able to say what you're thinking and what you've comprehended, the language that you're using. You don't have to use fancy words to score good on the speaking section. However, the language that you're using should make sense. It should just not be gibberish or something that goes out of context, or what you've heard or what you're asked to speak about. So also the third and the most important aspect would be the topic development. The topic that has been given to you, how well you've thought over it, how well you have listed down the things that you're going to speak about it, and how well you're able to deliver that. So even the scoring part or the quantums on which you're scored, they're also very interrelated. So if you do well on one, you will tend to do well on the other one. And then if you do well on two, then you will be able to do well on the third one as well. So the key is practice. Practice as much as you can. Can we please move to the next slide, Zeshaan? Thank you. So the question types, let's just first consider the independent task where you're asked to speak about a certain topic. Let's just take this example where it says, choose a teacher you admire and explain why you admire him or her. Please include specific examples and details in your explanation. So this could be an independent task that you could be given during the speaking section. So what will you do first? How would you tackle this question where they're asking you to speak about one of your teachers who you admire, and then you have to maybe give certain qualities or certain I don't know, certain characteristics of that teacher, and then you're also required to give examples and details in your explanation. It means that you will be thinking, and it means that you will be reasoning out what factors or what pointers you will be putting in and what pointers you will be speaking about. So a key to it could be that you first give introduction who that teacher is. Maybe it's your English teacher, and then you're expected to give 2-3 reasons what impact he or she had in your life, what kind of personality. Maybe she's tall, maybe she's very well spoken, maybe she's very composed, maybe she has done a great job in helping you improve your English skills, or maybe she's just helped you improve your personality. So, and in the end, you can give you're expected to give a conclusion or an example, maybe one memorable example about the teacher, what really impacted you as a person, what influence he or she had in your life, and why did you actually say that he or she was your favorite teacher. So this could be an example of the independent task. And as you can see, it is a fairly easy task. It's just that you need to know what you're asked. You need to read the question very carefully. And then you need to first prepare yourself that what you're going to write down. So as the format of the test is concerned, it does give you 15 seconds to prepare. So before you're expected to speak, you see the question on the screen, you're given 15 seconds to prepare, where you also get a paper where you can write down notes. So what I did when I took the test, I started noting down the points that I was going to speak about during these 15 seconds. And when the countdown stopped for my preparation time and the 45 seconds to speak up started, I knew what pointers I wanted to talk about. Yeah. So this could be a very clear strategy that you could use during your independent speaking task. Another example of the question could be where you have to take an opinion or a side about a certain topic. An example for this could be a question which asks you that some students study for classes individually, others study in groups. Which method of studying do you think is better for students and why? So there's no right or wrong answer. There's no particular formula that you need to follow to answer this question or any question in the speaking section. However, your language would play the key, and your reasoning ability would play the key. How well you're able to deliver, what kind of language you're using, and then how well you've reasoned it out. So if this question was given to you, how would you go ahead with this? Maybe you first start off taking a side. What's your opinion? Is it better to study individually, or is it better to study in groups? What as a student have you always preferred? Maybe from your own past experiences. As a person, I would go for studying in groups because it helps me stimulate my mind more, because when I talk to people, it helps me discuss more facts. So you list down the reasons for your support. First, I decided that I wanted to take the side of studying in groups. I wanted to support this opinion. And then I listed down the reasons for support. And then maybe you could give examples from personal life. Maybe you could, maybe you could just speak about an instance where you had to prepare for a test in like maybe a day, or maybe in a day or a night, and you just had limited time available and you did not have enough time to maybe go through all the notes or all the material that was provided to you. And then you decide to study in a group where everybody from the group maybe discuss certain factors or explain certain factors of the content. So this could be an approach, or this could be one of the examples that you could give. Then you can also write about advantages and disadvantages of the opinion that you've taken. and in the end, you can just give your final verdict, which will be your final recommendation. As far as the other questions are concerned, for the speaking section, the second task would be where you are given 30 seconds to prepare and then 60 seconds to speak. In the last task, you only had 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. So here the preparation time is more and the speaking time is more, which means it is going to be a kind of more complex task. I won't use the word complex because these questions are fairly simple, but I would just say a more challenging task maybe. So you would first be expected, since it is an integrated task, you would first be expected to read a passage. And this could be a short passage, maybe 700 words. And then you might be asked to listen to a conversation which is discussing a certain topic. For an example, let's see, maybe it's about university policies, about rules or procedures in a university, or the plans or anything related to that. So you first read a passage which gives you maybe the university policies regarding a certain topic. Then you listen to a conversation of 2 or 3 students who are studying in that university, and they're discussing their personal opinions about the particular policies of the university. Then you would be asked to share your own opinion and explain the reasons why he or she is holding that opinion, that the person that we're speaking during the conversation. So your reading capabilities are tested here, your listening capabilities are tested there, and finally your speaking capabilities. So it is all based on one another. So if you don't concentrate on one part of the task, you will not be able to do well on the others. It is all integrated. So you have to be very, very vigilant. Make sure you have a very good sleep before you go for the test so that you can focus and you can give it all your attention during the test. Can you please move to the next slide? Thank you. As far as the writing section is concerned, it also has one integrated task and one independent task. So we'll start off with the integrated task. As the name suggests, there will be some parts of reading or listening, or reading and listening involved. So first you will be expected to read a passage, which will still be available on the screen after the time limit for the reading time is gone. So you're just assigned 3 to 5 minutes to read the passage. Once these 3 to 5 minutes are gone, you will still be able to see the reading passage on the screen. It usually goes on the right upper corner of the screen. From my personal experience, it went there and I could just see it there. You will be then made to listen to a lecture. So a key, a point of thumb during this would be that you take notes while you're listening. And also when you're reading, you're able to highlight. So you could highlight certain parts of the passage if you would want, or maybe you could just note it down on your notes that, this is where the crucial or the critical information is given. Then you're given 20 minutes to write. And what are you asked to write about? And what is it that you're expected to do? You're not expected to give your personal opinions. This is a fairly objective task where you're asked to listen to key ideas in the listening section and then relate them to the reading passage. So what you're doing is you're synchronizing information from the 2 different mediums, and then you're writing it in the third medium, which is the writing medium. You are expected to write 150 to 225 words. You would be scored on how well you're able to write down the critical ideas in the 2 sections, and how well you're able to take out the relation between what you've read and what you've listened to, and how well you've written it. The way your delivery in terms of how well you've written it, the choice of words, the flow of the writing, that is also going to leave an impact. As far as the independent task is concerned, this is fairly easy. You're just given 30 minutes to write. You are expected to give your opinion on an issue. The word limit for this section, for this task, is 300 words. They will be testing you in terms of the quality and the effectiveness of the text that you've written. It won't go for the quantity. So if you've written, I don't know, maybe 3 pages or 4 pages, but you're missing down the important points, you will not score as well as somebody who has just written briefly but has given the crux of the topic that was discussed, or has given in the important information. So question types during this: There can be a question where you are where the reading passage, as I mentioned before, in the integrated task, you will have a reading passage and then a listening passage, and then listening excerpt, and then you will be writing about it. So there can be times when the reading passage and the listening passage do not comply with each other, in terms that they're both expressing different opinions, maybe completely opposite opinions. So what will you do in that context? Or if the lecture supports or strengthens the information in the reading passage, how will you take, what will be your take on the writing task in that scenario? So they can, when they do not agree, then you might be asked to explain how they are casting doubt on each other. What is it? What are the factors that are making you think that maybe the reading passage is explaining better than the listening package, the listening passage, because they're both expressing very different opinions. You will be expected to explain how they challenge each other, and you will be expected to write about the arguments that were made in the two, and maybe in your and maybe you could just mention them specifically. You could also talk about how they answer the problems, like the listening passage, how is it answering the problems raised in the reading passage, because they're both not agreeing with each other. So you're just focusing on all the factors which prove to you why they're not agreeing and what is the reason for them to not agree. As far as strengthening or supporting reading passage and the listening exercise is concerned, you will be sure, you need to be specifically sure that you explain how they support each other, how the listening passage is supporting the reading passage, and also you would be expected to focus on the points which strengthen the arguments placed in the two things, like in the reading passage and the listening exercise. So you would be focusing on that. These are very tiny and minute details, and these are very specific strategies or the specific pointers that you required to take your hold on to during your writing, while you're doing your writing passage. So you need to be really considerate, and you need to be very mindful of them while you're taking the test. And that is the reason I suggest, please practice, practice and practice. The more you practice, the better you will be able to do well. So now we have move on to the useful tips, and for that I ask Zeshaan to move forward.
Thank you, Maryam. So we are going to see some useful tips of these sections. For instance, in the reading section, when you're reading the passage, you should be able to identify the organization of the passage. For example, does the passage have classification? Is the passage presenting something that has a cause and an effect? Or has the passage presented a problem and then a solution? Or is there a compare or contrast going on within a passage? So one important thing that you need to take in mind is to increase your reading speed. And how can you do that? Read as much as possible, read books, read newspapers. And while you're reading things, don't try to memorize each and every detail, but get into the practice of skimming and to identifying the main ideas within the paragraphs and within the passages. Pay special attention on the beginning sentences of each paragraph. Generally, the first sentence of a passage gives the main idea of the whole passage, and the first sentence of each paragraph gives the main idea of the whole paragraph. Since you'll be given scratch papers, remember to make notes. Excuse me. And specifically, if there are any dates, any numbers given in the passage, pay special attention to those. Try to increase your vocabulary. One way to increase your vocabulary is through using the flashcards. There are flashcards available online and also on paper. Practice with your friends who are also preparing for the TOEFL exam. That would help you definitely. In terms of the writing integrated tasks, again, use the scratch paper as much as possible to jot down the key ideas. Try to make a maximum of 3 to 5 ideas that completely summarize the main conclusion of the integrated tasks. So you should know whether the main idea is being evaluated or is it being developed. Uh, Always, take a good look at whether the idea, whether whatever is being discussed, it's continuing in the same direction, or whether when you turn from, for instance, reading to listening, whether the listening part is going in an opposite direction to what you just read. It's important to know that. Do not spend too much time on reading the passage. It will reappear. And so you can go back and look at a specific statement if you want. And remember, you're not going to be scored for reading the passage, but for answering the question. Always make outlines on your scratch paper, and do not give your own opinion when you are going for examples. Do not copy paste from the passage. Use material from both sections. So using material from both sections means that if you have read a passage and then you have listened to a conversation, then your answer should include both. So just don't include your answer from one of them. That's because what they want to assess is your ability to integrate 2 or 3 tasks at the same time. For writing independent tasks, again, make an outline. You should be having a strategy whether you're going to be agreeing with the statement or disagreeing with it. Keep a track of time. Practice creating outlines at home. Practice using connecting words that make sense. For example, there are many varying views on the topic. In my opinion, while some may agree with this opinion, while I don't agree with it, use trigger words like however, nevertheless. This is what tells the this is what tells the reader what's to come. And for instance, when you want to give a conclusion, you can always start it with in conclusion so that the reader understands that now you're going to give a conclusion. You're not expected to write well-researched articles, obviously, because you're not expected to have a prior knowledge about the subject, but just try to do as well as you can while you are writing. Some tips for the listening section, again, make notes, but one thing that I emphasized before that was that, it's not going to be repeated. So when you're making notes, remember that your focus should not get away from the listening excerpt. Pay attention to the tone of the speaker and see if any opinions are being discussed. Don't try to memorize anything because you're not going to be able to remember everything. Just pay attention on important details. Are there any numbers there? Are there any days discussed? Are there any dates discussed? Practice understanding the overall gist. So yes, if you understand the overall gist, that's going to help you. Pay attention to how you organize your notes. Yes, so when you're organizing your notes, it's always good to make notes in a chronological manner, because that would not confuse you when you look at them later. Look if there is a comparison, if there is a subtopic within a topic, if there is a joke, a digression, or an example is given. Don't select answers only because they have words used in the passage. So because there are questions that may ask you to infer something, so that you would never find back in the passage. And always remember to eliminate options. So this is called process of elimination. So when you eliminate the wrong answer choices, what it does is it increases your chances to arrive at the correct answer choice. For instance, if there are 5 answer choices and you are able to eliminate 3, now you have a 50-50 chance of selecting the correct answer choice. So always use the process of elimination. Okay, for speaking, one important tip that I can give you is speak in English as much as you can at home, with family, with friends. That is definitely going to help you in your speaking section. Try to build independent ideas when you speak. Record your voice. Always try to listen to your own recording. That's going to help you. Practice using connecting sentences in speaking as well. Like, in my opinion, I believe, for example, in conclusion. Jot down notes during the 15 seconds that you are hearing a conversation, just to help with the direction example. Practice listening and speaking together with a partner. This I just mentioned. Okay, don't speak until you are told to do so. So in the speaking section, don't start speaking before you are asked to speak. And practice, practice, practice. Okay, so you can look at our email addresses. So if you are based in Punjab, you can contact us on our Lahore Education USA email address. For Islamabad, we have an address, and for Karachi, for the South region, if you are based in Sindh or Balochistan, you can contact us through these email addresses. So remember, TOEFL is not as difficult as the GRE, but basically this is an exam that assesses your basic English abilities in 4 areas. And if you are applying to a university, and there are certain universities that may waive your requirement for TOEFL if you had your studies in English, or if you have studied from a country that had English speaking mode of communication, then it may be waived, but then it's always great to ask the university. So Maryam, do we have any questions that we can go on?
Yes, certainly we do. So to start off, Ahmed Abdurrahman wants to know if he can summarize the test pattern in the end. Can we do it right now, please?
Can you repeat the question?
He wants us to go through the test pattern one last time. It was in the first or the second slide.
Okay, so I'll just go back and I'll show you the format. So this is the format. You have 54 to 72 minutes for the reading section and 30 to 40 questions that you'll be answering. Then you have the listening section, 41 to 57 minutes for that, 28 to 39 questions that you have to answer. Then you'll be having a 10-minute break, and then you'll be having 17 minutes of the speaking section where you would be having 4 tasks. And then you have the writing section for which you'll be having 50 minutes, and you have to do 2 tasks. One is the independent task and the other is an integrated task.
Thank you. Muhammad Bilal wants to know if there is a minimum score required in TOEFL for Fulbright scholarship.
So, if you're going for the Fulbright scholarship, you should at this point focus on the GRE exam, and only selected candidates are later asked to take TOEFL. And then there is, you need to have 100 for that, but that's generally not a difficult task for those who have already, done well in the GRE and have been selected for the Fulbright program. So, but don't worry about that right now. Just, focus on doing well on your GRE, and you have already gone through this workshop for TOEFL. It's pretty simple.
Thank you for answering that. Zeshaan Zafarullah Khan wants to know what is the cost of TOEFL iBT in Pakistan?
It's $195. I think we discussed it in the beginning. So in Pakistan, it's $195.
And then one of the students wants to know that what is the process of registering for TOEFL iBT home-based test?
Okay, so for home-based test, what you can do is you can go to the ETS website, www.ets.org/TOEFL. And then there, the first thing that you need to do is to get registered, make an account at the ETS site. And then after that, what you need to do is you need to pay for your TOEFL exam. After that, you will get an email from ProctorU, and then you will be asked to select a date, and then after that you're ready to go. But before you can, the first step, even before you pay the fees, you have to fulfill certain requirements. So read through those requirements, like there is a certain requirement for bandwidth, for laptop, for Windows, the version of Windows that they want. So go through that, and then if you think that you fulfill those requirements, then make your payment.
Thank you for answering that. Huzaifa has concerns about concentrating and hearing during the session because he believes that there will be surrounding sounds. Can you talk about the headset and the ability to, concentrate during the listening section?
So if you're doing TOEFL from home, you have to make sure that the room that you would be sitting in should not have any distracting sound. Always close the window, try to switch off the fan. And basically, if you take TOEFL by the time the centers are open, then they take special care in making sure there is no irrelevant sound there. And the people in the center, they are not the test takers are not allowed to disturb others, and the headsets are pretty good, so shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you for answering that. Ali wants to know if the TOEFL score expires, and if it does, then after how much time?
So generally the TOEFL score is accepted by most universities or wherever it is used for 2 years. So if you have taken TOEFL and 2 years have passed, then it's a good idea to take the TOEFL again.
Thank you. Radhika wants to know that during the listening section, do we listen and answer questions at the same time, or is there a time lag between the two things?
You listen first and then you are asked to answer.
Thank you for answering that. Zeshaan, is there an age or eligibility requirement to take this test?
So there is no age, there are no age restrictions, but when you can take the exam if you have your either your valid passport or your chip-based Nadra's CNIC card. But if someone wants to take a test who is 15 years or younger, then they should be accompanied by an authorized older adult who is 18 or more, and they will also need to carry their identification document with them. So this is one thing that's required if you're 15 or lesser of age.
Inamul Haq wants to know if there is any passing marks for this test.
Generally, it's just like the GRE. You need to do as well as possible for this. But if you are, it's always a good idea to ask the school if they have certain preference for a score, so that you know what you're targeting for.
Very well said. Muhammad Bilal is saying that for reading section, what would be the best strategy, to read the passage first, or read questions first?
So it varies. I personally like to read the passage first and then read the questions, because then I have some confidence that I know what the content of the passage is all about. But I've seen certain students who like to read the questions first and then go to the passage. So it really, try practicing both, and whatever you feel comfortable with, follow that.
Thank you. Zeshaan, Ali Zain wants to know the difference between GRE and TOEFL.
Yes, so basically, I read this question and I think he was asking whether he should take GRE and TOEFL if he's applying for a US university. So GRE is totally something different. GRE is an exam that on which you are assessed how well you would be able to do in your master's and PhD. So it has a mathematical portion, an essay writing portion, and a verbal portion. So it's not necessarily a test of your basic English. It's an aptitude test. On the other hand, TOEFL is a test of your English. So this is used to assess whether you would be able to communicate in English once you are in the United States of America. So these are two different things. You may be required to take both. And as I mentioned previously, TOEFL is generally, students find it to be easier than the GRE.
Thank you for answering that. And this question, we will be ending our session. Thank you, students, for attending our session. Thank you, viewers, for being here and for listening to all the information that we had to share. Thank you very much, Zeshaan, for sharing all the details of this test and for answering the questions of the students. And from this, we would be saying goodbye from United States Education Foundation in Pakistan. Thank you very much for attending the session once again.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.